Hello everyone, welcome to our KaiNexus Training Team Office Hours webinar, aka the Banna Rippy Show, episode 21.
We're getting old.
We're officially legal to go grab a drink after this webinar now.
Can we get the car though?
Not yet, not quite. not there yet. My name is Ryan Rippy. I am the Senior Customer Enablement Manager here at KaiNexus, and I am joined, I would say as always, but you're pretty flaky, Banna, but I'm joined by my partner in crime, Solutions Engineer Matt Banna here.
I only missed 2. I was at the last one. I'm here now.
It's good to see you, Banna.
It's good to be here. Are you ready for football season? Bears Packers 1 week. Go Bears.
Yeah, I've actually been prepping for all my fantasy football drafts, including the KaiNexus fantasy draft next week. You ready for that one?
Well, I'm gonna earn the KaiNexus badge for winning the draft this year. The Hoshin Huddles are gonna take first place.
You're right.
How did you do last year, kid?
Moving on. So for those of you new to our webinar series, welcome aboard. The way this works is Banna and I plan to nerd out here for the next 30 minutes or so on a KaiNexus topic that we will share with you all in just a bit. The purpose of these webinars is for us to review the hottest topics and latest and greatest features suggested by you, our customers. Before I reveal our topic for today, let's actually just quickly go over some housekeeping items for everyone. So first and foremost, the webinar is being recorded. So we're going to go ahead and send out the slides as well as the recording to everyone after the webinar.
There's not too much on the slides though.
Not too much on the slides, so definitely want to hear our voices again by watching the webinar. Also, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type those into the chat box. We will do our best to answer those in real time, as well as at the very end of the webinar if there is some time left over. Banna and I were pretty proactive coming into this webinar and trying to reach out to all of you for the questions that you had leading up to this. So hopefully you got the responses you needed, but if you do have additional questions as we go through this today, please feel free to add those to the chat box that we have. All right, let's take a look at the webinar topic for today that everybody is already aware of. There's the drum roll. Milestones. So we have had a ton of improvements to our Milestones Add-On Module over the last few months, and we've been getting a ton of requests from both our customers that are currently using Milestones, as well as those who are thinking about using the Milestones Add-On Module. So we figured for today's webinar topic, we would take a deeper dive into all things milestone related.
Yeah, what are milestones? Why would you use them? How do you use them? Everything.
And I've been spending quite a bit of time with our development team here over the last couple of weeks, so my mind is 100% in milestones right now. I apologize if I'm super high level and really technical at all today, but there's a lot that can be done with the milestones, so I'm excited to give everyone a crash course there.
I'll bring him back if he dives too deep.
So let's see specifically what's on the agenda that Banna and I want to cover today. All right, Banna, so I figured we could start off with just kind of the simple configuration, like what it looks like, getting everybody up to speed there. From there, we're going to talk about the different ways for ready versus approval, kind of what that process looks like, what triggers that in the system. The way that the milestones can be made ready, what sort of actions will dictate that. Talk a little bit about optional milestones. That was something new that we unveiled this year. So, sometimes you might have certain milestones that are only triggered based on some sort of other action. We'll go through what that looks like.
They're pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, yeah, optional, it's just like your optional fields. You might not necessarily have to fill those out, but, there is the case where it might become required. And then we're going to have our block statuses. So, what would prevent you, based on a milestone, from moving an item through the life cycle in KaiNexus. We'll talk about what are referred to as unset actions. So once milestones have been approved, if there's anything done on the item that would unapprove those milestones, we'll kind of walk through what that looks like. Obviously, everything is going to come back to permissions. So not everybody can go in and just willy-nilly approve and disapprove milestones. There is going to be some permissions involved with who's going to be able to do that on items. And then we'll cap things off with notifications. Everybody loves the notifications in KaiNexus, keeping them aware of what actions they need to take. And so specifically with these milestones, we'll kind of go over how you can set those up, best practices to make sure that you're in the loop there. Sound good, Banna?
Cool, love it.
So I said we're going to start with configuration, but one of the things that we always love to start with at KaiNexus before we actually get into the products is,
are you lying to our attendees?
Let's start with why. So let's take it back a little bit. So for those of you who are just kind of hearing about milestones for the first time, milestones, which again is a KaiNexus add-on module, might not necessarily be configured and available in your system right now, but essentially these are used to help create customizable workflows in KaiNexus, right? So the Milestones KaiNexus add-on module, you can use this to track process steps and approvals, as well as maybe stages of your improvement work in the system. So we're going to see today, but just to kind of set the stage, an example of an approval may be, for example, say example twice there. You have your finance department, right? Maybe they want to confirm impact on an improvement or project that you believe is going to save the company $1 million.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money,
huge.
right? I hope you did your math coming up with that number, but you might want to have a milestone that maybe someone in finance can sign off on before you go ahead and move forward, and that starts to hit the reports in KaiNexus.
I mean, we don't want everybody saying they're saving $1 million on every single idea. I mean, yes, we do. We want everybody saving $1 million all the time. But to make sure that they actually are, you can send it to finance.
Right. To make sure no faulty numbers are slipping through, you can go ahead and set up that type of approval. The other example that we're going to talk a little bit about today is maybe you have stages on an improvement. So maybe you're running an improvement through a PDCA cycle, or if your organization uses the DMAIC process, and if you want to identify what stage we are in currently in that item, such as plan, do, check, or act/adjust for that PDCA cycle, that's another way that you can use milestones and visualize that on the item as well. So really the big aspect of milestones that we want to stress here is the benefit of standardization, right? Milestones make sure that the right work is getting done the right way in the right order at the end of the day, before you're able to actually move on to that next step in the process. So just wanted to set the expectations and talk a little bit more about kind of the why behind milestones before we get into the more technical ways that they're going to work in KaiNexus. So awesome. Banna, with that, let's hop out of our slide deck.
I was gonna say, are you gonna talk all day? Or?
No, I'm gonna allow you to get a couple words in there. So Banna, let's first introduce kind of the items that we're gonna be looking at here in the next 20 minutes, and then kind of show what this is gonna look like in KaiNexus for people who have maybe never seen milestones before.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to focus on two items today. They're called tool presentations and closet organization, kind of spin off of our normal part presentations and storage organizations here. But for right now, I'm going to jump into our old example part presentation so we can show what exactly milestones may look like. So each milestone status is indicated by a different icon. Scrolling down the bottom here. A gray circle indicates not ready for approval. A blue circle means that the milestone is ready to be approved. So you said, it's ready. I want somebody to get notified about this. I want somebody to come check it out. A green check indicates that the milestone has been approved. So that person came in, they looked at whatever you needed them to look at, and they said, yep, you're good to go. Keep moving on. And this red X here means that the milestone has not been approved. So it means that you said it was ready. Somebody came and looked at it, and they said, nope. You need to go back, you need to make some changes, you need to make some edits. This isn't exactly what we're looking for. So these items will appear both on these icons.
Come on, we're big on the icons.
We're big on icons.
Don't screw that up.
These icons will both appear on the item right here, and they'll also appear in the milestone column of a tree, list, or Gantt view.
Yeah, so let's switch gears here, Banna, but before we keep talking through the milestones there, what Banna's done is he set up a milestone board here. And as you can see, there is a column available where for the milestones, where you'll be able to see the exact milestone that the current item is at in the process. So we can visualize that here on a board using an item list card and adding that column. The other thing that you'll be able to do is if you want to filter down one of these specific cards, we have some, oh, okay, perfect. So there it's set up where you can actually filter down based on specific milestones and what part of the process are they in. Are they ready for approval, not ready for approval, approved, etc. So a lot of visualization that can be done just not only on the item, but on boards. And of course, with the powering of our filtering in KaiNexus, you'll be able to filter down specifically for those items and what milestone they're at as well. So very nice, Banna. I like what I see here.
Cool.
You did a good job setting this up.
Thank you.
Okay. So Banna, we're going to talk now a little bit about the ready actions that I mentioned earlier. So there are a number of ways to turn a milestone from that gray not ready for approval that Banna mentioned status to the blue ready to be approved status. And these are referred to as ready actions. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump into do tool presentations first. Is that fine?
Yes.
We'll do tool presentation. If we need to hop into the other one, we can do so. So let's come back down to that milestone section here. And so there are 4 different types of ready actions that we can use. The first is what we call human. So that's just, that's manual. So the way that that would be set up is that a person, based on the permissions they have on the item, can go ahead and opt to change the status of the milestone to ready for approval.
No robots here, humans only.
No robots, humans only. I like that.
That's designated by these examples here.
Yeah, so in this case, what we see here is we have these options that I can come in and say, hey, we're actually ready for due. Is it okay if I click one of these? So we can say ready for due.
But we didn't hit plan first, so we gotta do plan first.
Okay, well that's what I asked you first. So essentially, I'll have these options down here that I can come in and click the button and go ahead and make that item ready at that point.
But see, that was a great example, because even though we hadn't had that plan step yet, and we said ready for due, well, it's still not going to be ready until we hit that first step.
Mm-hmm. Good point, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that first step is in just a bit here. The second type of milestone, it can be based off of the ready action can be the status. And so what that means is we can make the milestone ready based on the item moving into a specific status in KaiNexus. So Banna's giving me the thumbs up that we can show that here on this particular tool presentations. So correct me if I'm wrong, Banna, but the way that we set this up is the plan here for our PDCA on this particular A3, this will be made ready for approval as soon as I actually plan the item in KaiNexus.
That's correct.
So it's going to pull from that specific status here. So let's go ahead and plan this. Now I'll go ahead and say that we'll make Greg responsible, and we'll go ahead and plan that. And so now what we should see is if we come down to that milestone section again, we'll see that the plan has now been made ready for approval. Gotta love it.
You're surprised.
Yeah, well,
I set it up right.
I wanted to make sure you configured everything. I gave you, 24 hours notice. So that's the second one. As we saw there, we made a status that went ahead and initiated that ready action. The next one I want to talk about is attributes. So we can also set it up that a milestone can be made ready when a specific attribute value on an item is selected. Ben, I think I have to switch over.
You have to switch over,
switch over to the other one. Okay, perfect. So
I think we're going to be mostly done with this one.
We're all done with tool presentations.
We should be, yeah.
Okay, well, RIP tool presentations. Thanks for helping us out on the webinar. Let's jump over to the closet organization. So with this one, a little different of a format here. This is actually following more of the custom layout that we use at KaiNexus for A3s. And so we'll see we have this milestones panel over here that we're going to go ahead and update an attribute value, which is then going to trigger a ready over here in the milestone section.
Yep.
So Banna, which attribute are we updating? Where should I go here?
So we said that if we move this into a high level of importance, so
okay.
Scroll down here.
So I'm just missing the panel that we need. Okay,
Yep.
Perfect. So we got some additional information. So what we're going to do is we'll come in here And what would trigger a milestone for ready for approval is if we select for level of importance, if we determine that this is high. So we'll see as soon as I go ahead and do that and I save this, when we come up back to that milestones panel, we'll see that a particular milestone is now going to be made ready for approval based on that attribute value that I just selected. So we see the initial approval is now ready for approval. So
and we even spoiled that one a little bit because that was both optional and
yeah. You'll talk about optional milestones in a second. Let me do my thing over here. So let's get to the fourth one. The fourth ready action that we can trigger is based on previous milestone approval. So what that would mean is that the milestone will automatically become ready for approval when the previous milestone has been approved. So in this case, if we go ahead and wanted to say initial approval and sign off on that, let's say, for example, I know there's an optional milestone in there, but let's say final leadership approval had followed that. That would then turn blue and be made ready for approval.
Yep, just because that last one
just based on the previous milestone being approved. So just to recap again, in terms of these ready actions, again, is what we call them, and what's going to make a milestone ready for approval. It can be based off of human, not robot. We can do the status, we can do an attribute value selection, or we can base it off of the previous milestone approval. Perfect. All right, Banna, go ahead, talk about your optional milestones.
Optional, they're one of the coolest parts here. So while most milestones are ready or are required to get approved, as those PDCA milestones we looked at earlier, some milestones aren't always needed. And these are called optional milestones and can be activated only in specific situations. Just like ready actions, there are multiple ways of activating an optional milestone. Now, you saw before that initial approval didn't even exist earlier. Mm-hmm. And when we selected that attribute, it automatically popped up and was made ready. So that's one of our first conditions of activating an optional milestone.
Is that attribute value selection that we just saw there. Perfect.
Yep. An optional milestone can be activated when an attribute value on an item is selected. We selected high level importance, boom, that milestone appeared.
Got it. Okay.
The second way is pretty basic. It's human again.
We're talking about humans and robots again?
About humans and robots. A user with the correct permissions can choose to activate an optional milestone. They can come in, they can select the edit pencil button, and then they can just activate it on their own.
Yeah, assuming they have the right permissions, there'll be an optional milestone that they can go ahead and add directly here from this milestones kind of configuration screen.
Let's go ahead and approve that while we're in here.
Sure thing. Yeah. Approve that, save. Give us our green check mark. We are moving on in our process.
So the last way that an optional milestone can be activated is with a financial impact.
This is my favorite. This is
really cool.
This is super powerful, very recent. I'm excited to see this one in action.
So if we go through and let's say we did all the work. I mean, it's mostly filled out already, but we did all the work in here. So did this result in change? Yes, it did. This resulted in maybe some kind of revenue generation, and maybe it was $5,000.
Thought we were going with $1 million before.
Hashtag math. We can do $1 million.
$1 million. That's what we're trying to aim for.
$1 million. Boom. Big improvement.
Okay.
We made so much money.
so
we'll be able to hit save. And the first thing you'll see, I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit again, is we can't even complete this improvement out right now. That milestone won't let us. So we'll have to hit save. And because that impact went above a certain threshold, then we're going to have another milestone that appeared right here. Financial approval. And we can say, all right, well, it looks like I have to hit that one now. We're ready. I'm going to send some notifications over to my finance team, and they're going to come make sure that we really made another $1 million on this improvement.
So yeah, so essentially the way that we set that up is we identified the threshold that if
in this case it was $1,000.
It was anything more than $1,000 of revenue generation.
Of impact, any kind of impact.
Any kind of impact. Okay.
Yep. So
you can get more granular, but in this case it was any impact that was greater than $1,000 was going to go directly to finance so that they can sign off on that.
So you can do individual categories, like you can just do anytime you make a revenue generation, or you can do any kind of impact. So if you have $1,000 and 500 came from cost savings and 500 came from revenue generation, well, combined that's 1,000. We're going to need some checkoffs on that.
AKA hashtag math.
Hashtag math.
Awesome. That's super awesome, man. I think that's a great use case. Is anytime a threshold of a certain impact is hit, to get the finance involved to be able to sign off on that. That's probably the most common use case and a great example that you gave there. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now, and I'm going to talk about block statuses. So one of the other things with milestones is these can be configured to block item statuses until the milestone has been approved.
Yeah, like we couldn't approve that one before.
Exactly.
Yeah, we couldn't complete that improvement out.
And so essentially what this means is that project leaders can ensure that the proper steps and procedures have been followed before we move the item into a planned, active, resolution submitted, completed, or deferred status. So I think the two common examples would be, let's say, for example, in this case, like we have this new A3. Maybe we need to go do some forecasting. Maybe we need to kind of start to plan this project before we can actually activate it. If we set up some milestones that would prevent us from activating this until they had been signed off on, that would kind of be the prep work, if you will, before you can actually start working on the project.
Yep.
So I think that's a pretty common example, is before we can even get out of new to start working on it, is we kind of have to go through our checklist and sign off on some milestones. The second thing that I've seen is pretty common is to block the complete status, right? So if we have,
that's what we have here.
That's what we have set up on this one, for example. So in this case, we wouldn't be able to actually resolve and complete this out, of course, because of that financial approval, but we wouldn't necessarily be able to complete this.
Go ahead and approve that while we're
we
here.
won't be able to complete this particular A3 until all of the milestones have been signed off on, and then we'll be able to move into that complete status. So those are probably the two biggest ones that we see are very common with the milestones. If you want to block statuses, it would be, you know, before you can get active or before you can actually complete the item in the system.
Yep, that's right. So let's go ahead and we'll make sure that we can actually complete this item. We're gonna approve all of our milestones here, go in and approve this last one, hit save, and then we're gonna go through and complete it so we can move on to our next configuration option, which is called unset actions. So milestones can also be configured to unset or become unapproved if a number of actions happen in the item. So this is most useful for something when an item has changed, maybe the impact. We went in, we're like, oh, well, we didn't make $1 million, we made $2 million. So we have to go in and we have to re-edit our impact.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the project details have changed, or even if we just reopen that item, the changes will then have to be reapproved. So that first one is if you have the impact change on an item, then the milestone can actually be unset, it can reopen. So in this case, we've set it to say, if we have to go in and we change our revenue generation here, and we'll say, you know, maybe we did really hit that 2 million mark. Save it out. And then that leadership approval is unset. So we're gonna have to go back in and go get that leadership approval one more time because we made changes to that item.
Got it. So this was an example of there was a change in the impact that resulted in a milestone being unset. And the other ones you mentioned were if there was maybe just a change to the details, or if you reopen the item, that could also unset those milestones so that they have to go through that process again before completion or et cetera.
That's correct. I mean, we really want to make sure that if you check off a milestone and then something goes back and gets changed before that approval needs to be made, that approval will have to re-happen again.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. And that's in this case, they're
that's kind of wordy in a little bit.
No, but I got you. You did a perfect example of if you had $1 million and you know what our threshold was, but you went in there and said, hey, actually it was 2 million. Well, let's relax. We're not gonna be like, oh, okay, we trust you. Yeah, it was 2 million.
Well,
no,
you know, we you know, it's culture of people. We want to trust our people. The IRS doesn't always trust people. So.
Touche, Banna. All right. So one of the things that I mentioned when we were kind of taking a look at our agenda for today is the permissions that go into this, right? You know, Banna's been kind of showing us the approvals and unapprovals and all that kind of stuff. Banna has he's got a super user type of role in the system where he's able to all do this, but you know, we can make sure that the proper people have the right permission to approve, unapprove specific milestones in the system. And so what that looks like when you're talking about approvals is there's essentially two types of roles that you can have that allow you to approve or disapprove specific milestones. So the first is specific to your system role. Okay, so system roles are typically set up by your organization that are going to dictate the permissions and access and sort of notifications that you might get in the system. So based on your system role in KaiNexus, you can have permissions to work with milestones.
What are some examples of system roles?
So a system role could be, I mentioned super user, I have full permission. If you are maybe a location leader that is, kind of just focusing on improvement work within your specific department, maybe you want to make sure that those location leaders are only going to be approving the milestones on items that they're overseeing. So your location, or excuse me, your role rather, you'll be able to access and figure out what that role is. If you click on your user profile here, you'll see that for your roles, what roles you have in the system. And so these are again configured by your KaiNexus admins, and we can set these roles up to dictate what those permissions are going to be on the milestones. For admins that might be on the call, that's going to be your roles that you can find here underneath organization here in the admin section. So the first is that system role that can dictate that permission. What we just recently added was the ability to have team roles that can also dictate permissions. Banna, let's get back in. What was that item again we were working on?
Well, we closed those, so you can use one of the.
Go back in part pres.
Part pres is fine.
So just so we can see the milestones again. So the approver team roles is a little bit different. Those are going to refer to the team roles on an item that we can see over here in this top right panel. So essentially what we can say is, hey, the responsible person on the item has the ability to approve or disapprove a specific milestone. So two different types of permission that can be set up based on your system role or based on your team role in KaiNexus. Banna, let's talk notifications.
Yeah, I think that's our last step that we have on here is notifications. But just like normal item updates, milestones can also send notifications. We want to make sure that when approvals are needed, the leaders that need to approve are notified. Because we don't want anything to sit in KaiNexus space and kind of just sit there waiting for approvals forever and ever and ever. We want those people to actually get notifications in their email and their notification window that they need to go approve things.
And so what Banna is going to show us is the ability to, we can set these up at the role level that I just showed earlier, or you can go in and set up personal notification preferences as well. Now, this is not to say that on the item itself, if you are a team member, you are going to have those notifications come in regardless. So these are just going to be more, maybe we always use the kind of the finance example. If I'm in the finance location and I'm going to be responsible for approving certain milestones, I might not be a team member and actually see those items. But once that milestone has been made ready for me to approve, I want to get that notification and make sure I can jump in and take action there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways that you can set up a milestone notification for maybe when it's ready. So we said when we hit those ready actions, whether it's a human granted or an attribute, we can have a notification sent by those. When it's improved, so you can get an update about when milestones are approved or unapproved. Or even with those optional milestones, you can know when that milestone gets added to your item or when it's removed.
Yep.
If you're no longer needed on it.
Perfect. Banna, you said that was going to be the last thing, but I said earlier I've been spending a lot of time with our. Well, I know.
You're misleading our audience.
I told them that we were going to start with configuration. We started with why. You were going to end with notifications. But I just wanted to take the opportunity. I've been working very closely with our product and development team here over the last few weeks, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's coming with milestones. What's the next step? What's the next feature enhancement that we're going to use to make this add-on module that much more powerful for everyone that's using those. And so as part of our next release, 2.4, which is expected sometime in October, we are going to be this is a big one for those of you. We'll talk about KaiNexicon, but we're essentially going to have the ability to add deadlines to milestones. And so what that's going to essentially look like is when a milestone is made ready, there is a duration where you have that you actually need to go in and approve that milestone, for example. And so there's going to be notifications around that. You're going to be able to see any of those milestones that are now, overdue because I haven't gone in and approved those. So I'm super excited. I don't want to spoil too much what it's going to look like. We'll talk more about it on our release video. But we are going to be introducing the concept of adding deadlines to milestones to just reinforce that standard workflow process.
So you're saying that we just did all this work on milestones and we're gonna have to do more,
well,
like another webinar about milestones with our new features?
Potentially down the line, yes.
Continuous improvement.
Continuous improvement, exactly. So I just wanted to make that point there. Banna, it looks like we are at time. I'm gonna take a look and see if any questions have come in, but why don't you take us out in the meantime?
Great. Well, Rip did mention KaiNexus coming up. So if you haven't done so already and you want to meet us in person, register for KaiNexus 2019, hosted here in sunny Austin, Texas. Hopefully it still won't be too hot. It's on September 24th and 25th of this year. So if you want to go and you're not registered yet, talk to your leaders, your organization, get some budget approved, buy some tickets, come down here, hang out with us. Music, drinks, food. I mean, obviously KaiNexus and Banna and Rippy, which is a pretty big part of KaiNexus. You'd be crazy to miss out on this spectacular event. But thanks again for the time, everyone, today. We hope these webinars are valuable, and we certainly appreciate your feedback. We have a ton of fun when we make them, so I hope that you guys have fun listening to them. Be sure to check out all of our webinars from this year and last year. Head over to kainexus.com/webinars/office hours. There's a little link. It's got our faces on it. You can click on it. It'll take you to all of our webinars. And be sure to be in attendance for our live edition of the Banna Rippy Show, which we'll be hosting in Austin, September 24th, 25th. Mark your calendars. Now, if you have any questions or need assistance with the milestones that we talked about today, please reach out to your KaiNexus customer experience representative. And in the meantime, you can always check out support.kainexus.com for any of your support questions and needs. I'm Matt Banna. He's Ryan Rippy.
Thanks for tuning in.
And we'll see you next time.